What's going on, baseball fans? Jeremy Laracuente here for the Baseball Banter Broadcast. Now, I wanted to come to you a little less filler, a little more conversation. Rob Manfred had a lot to say in his press conference on Thursday. This is going to be my more long-form discussion. So, let's get into it. So I want to begin by saying that there was a lot said by Rob Manfred in that press conference, especially when he was answering questions from the reporters that were in attendance. I also think that there was a lot to kind of unpack in the things that he said. So there's a few bullet points that I want to kind of go over, a few things that he mentioned that I want to kind of harp on a little bit more. First things first, let's go over and kind of recap what was said during that press conference, kind of the big news moments, the big news points. First of all, Universal DH is coming to Major League Baseball in 2022. As you know, if you follow this channel for any length of time, I am a big believer in the Universal DH. And to me, it's just a long overdue thing. The fact that pitchers have continued to hit, the fact that we weren't able to continue that process over from the 2020 season was just an absolute joke. Just look at any pitcher's hitting numbers compared to even one of the worst hitters in the league, and you'll see that it's a night and day comparison. So, Universal DH coming, that's a very good thing. One of the big pieces that came out of what Rob Manfred was saying was that they are eliminating draft pick compensation tied to free agents. To me, this is a big one. And the reason why I think it's so big is that we've seen a lot of free agents get kind of shortchanged when it comes to certain deals, maybe having to take a one-year deal for less money just to lose that tie-in to a draft pick, which, in my opinion, should have never been the case. Players work years and years and years, and in some cases get their service time manipulated by their clubs in order to be able to make it to free agency, and then they get attached to this draft pick that then makes teams weary and not want to go after them. So to me, losing this, eliminating this is a very big thing for the players, for the game itself. I think that this will allow free agents to kind of move about in a better form. So that they're not tied, so teams don't have to worry about losing a draft pick based on picking up of one of the best players in the game. The other thing that was added and brought about was the installation of a draft lottery. Now, how they go about doing it, we haven't gotten any kind of details, whether they do it similar to how the NBA does, where they kind of run through this random ping pong drawing, or whether they do it by percentage base and then they kind of just pick a name out of a hat. No matter the form that we get this draft lottery, I think that it's a very good thing. It will help kind of deter from tanking. I'm working on a video right now that would be if I were commissioner for a day, and that's one of the things that, you know, I think really needed addressing. Both the players and seemingly some of the owners, at least, wanted to address the issue of tanking. So by instituting a draft lottery, it now forces the hands of the worst teams, quote unquote, to not necessarily get the best picks year after year. So the strategy that we would see from the Cubs and the Astros is no longer going to be in effect. Thank God, because this is an absolute joke of a strategy. Max Scherzer said it in his tweet just a few days ago that eliminating tanking as a winning strategy was a must for the players, and this will help to deter that. Another one of the things that was brought up was a bonus pool for the top players, the top young players. The idea of getting younger players paid earlier as opposed to having to wait through the arbitration process or to free agency when you're already at an elder states age. For the game of baseball at that point, you may not see the same kind of revenue you would have seen while you were in your prime of your career. So that to me is another one of the things that was very beneficial for this agreement, for the things that Rob Manfred said. Now, they also spoke about expanding playoffs. Both the player side and the owner's side want to expand playoffs. I don't think there's such a huge divide there. I think that the players want 12 teams, the owners want 14, so 7 per side. To me, that's going to be something that they can easily bridge the gap on. I was also working on a proposal for expanded playoffs in my own general manager, in my own commissioner of baseball proposal, so we'll get into that more later on a future video. But I think expanding playoffs is going to be a good thing for the sport. When it comes to the game of baseball, the most intensive games are those playoff atmosphere type games, whether through the regular season or especially in the postseason. So those are the games that have the most eyes on the product, and to me, having more of them is not a bad thing. Now, one thing that was mentioned that we didn't get a lot of details on was the fact that there was concern and something addressed that will be addressed in the proposal that the owners make to the players on Saturday, February 12th, that is said to address the issue of service time manipulation. Now, no details were given through the press conference. However, anything that can be done to avoid this strategy is absolutely paramount in my opinion. I think when you look back, and I always think back and call back to Chris Bryant and the Cubs. The Cubs held him down for an extra 3 weeks just to extend a year of service time for them being able to hold on to him. And to me, that absolutely ruins the game of baseball. I give big props and big kudos to the Padres and to the Mets for bringing up Fernando Tatis Jr. and Pete Alonso for the whole season right from the start. To me, that is how you're supposed to unveil your top prospects. Not having your team maybe floundering for 3 weeks and not being able to fully showcase what your team has to offer. So to me, anything that can eliminate this service time manipulation is absolutely necessary for the game. Now, where things started to kind of get a little bit derailed for me in terms of Rob Manfred's press conference is when he started to kind of make it about himself.
By the way, can I say one other, I really should say one other thing. In the history of baseball, the only person who has made a labor agreement without a dispute, and I did 4 of them, was me. Somehow, during those 4 negotiations, players and union representatives figured out a way to trust me enough to make a deal. I'm the same person today as I was in 1998 when I took that labor job. I mean, I just don't know what else to say in response to that.
I've not been shy about the fact that I do not like Rob Manfred as the commissioner of baseball. I think that he is going to go down as one of the worst commissioners in baseball, and I just don't believe that he's done anything to this point. And maybe this proposal, maybe this new CBA might change my mind. I don't think it will, but it's possible. When he started to go down the path of trying to justify why revenue sharing couldn't be removed, the owners were not moving on that. They were not budging on the fact that revenue sharing would be lowered, which is something that the players have insisted needs to happen. Now, here's my opinion on the way that revenue sharing has seemed to go. And I do kind of side more with the players on this because I just don't see some of these quote-unquote smaller market teams reinvesting the money that they get from revenue sharing onto the field. To me, it seems like these owners are just pocketing that cash, tanking out, bottoming out their teams for several years, and then getting several top picks, and then trying to compete 4 or 5 years later. Look at the Baltimore Orioles the last 3 years. They have been an absolute albatross of a team. To me, this is not a strategy that should be employed. And by eliminating some of that revenue sharing money that goes to these smaller teams, yes, there's a possibility that it will now hinder them from being able to make moves. But in my opinion, they're not making moves. So if you're not making moves with the money that you're given to make moves, where's that money going? That's a big question. Where would that money be going? And to me, that's a valid question that the players are asking. And the owners want to kind of stay hush-hush about that. For me, there has to be something that has to be done about these clubs, these, quote, small market teams that aren't reinvesting this money, And I think that when you look at the higher seeded payroll clubs that are constantly having to pour money into this pool, this fund, and then the smaller market teams aren't actually investing on the on-field product. A team like the Pittsburgh Pirates is likely going to have predominantly, probably about 75 to 90% of their team, I would say, be young players that are on very team-friendly contracts that aren't going to be making much more than the major league minimum. Yet, they're going to be a part of this revenue sharing recipients list, and where's that money being reinvested? Because it does not seem like it's being reinvested to the field. You know, one of the issues that was addressed by Manfred was about raising the salary for young players across the board. Very big issue, and I do think that that is something that has to be addressed, whether it be the cost of the major league minimum or anything of that nature. I also think that minor league players need to get paid better, but that's for another video. So there was a lot there said by Rob Manfred. Now, I want to get into a bit more of my feelings on this upcoming proposal. The fact that Rob Manfred did try to make it seem as if the players were holding things back was something that I had speculated was going to happen on one of my YouTube shorts. So for me, I think that if this proposal is going to be the proposal that, as he kept stating in his press conference, was that one thing that causes the agreement to start falling into place, why wait till Saturday? Why make this press conference on Thursday to then kind of build towards a meeting a couple of days later? Why not present the players with that offer? Amir Garrett of the Cincinnati Reds would ask that very question on Thursday. If this is going to be a, quote, good faith proposal by the owners, why wait? You instituted a lockout on December 2nd to try to speed up the process. And yet there was nothing until January. No communication between the players and the owners. And then he tried to make the point that, phones work two ways, that the players could have also picked up the phone and given him a call. No, Rob, you are the facilitator of baseball as the commissioner. You were supposed to be the conduit, the go-between between the owners and the players. Your job is to work with Tony Clark as the head of the Players Association to make sure that the game on the field goes onto the field. You made a big deal about not saying that spring training was going to be delayed yet. That was very evident. That depending on how Saturday goes, depends on whether or not spring training starts on time. You want at least 4 weeks of spring training to try to avoid the injuries like we would see in 2020 with just a 3-week spring training. Cool. However, when you start to try to push off the blame instead of taking the onus on yourself after instituting this lockout and not having any form of communication, no conversations with the players and their representatives for over a month, you have to begin to question whether or not you're actually working in good faith. And there's a lot of distrust and a lot of mistrust between the players and Rob Manfred and the owners in terms of this collective bargaining agreement. The potential, and I think one of the things that's going to come out with this proposal that comes out on Saturday, I'm recording this on Friday, February 11th, I think one of the things that's going to be coming out about this proposal is a salary floor as one of the ways to kind of deter tanking that they're going to offer. Now, the problem is that while there hasn't been a, quote, salary cap in Major League Baseball, the luxury tax threshold has been working as a salary cap. Teams are not trying to go over that. The New York Yankees are one of the richest franchises in all of baseball, and yet we have a penny-pinching owner in Hal Steinbrenner, right? Now, yes, the Yankees have over a $200 million payroll, but they're constantly voicing the opinion of trying to stay under the luxury tax. That's one of the main reasons why Yankee fans miss the boss so much, because he didn't care. His goal was winning, right? And a salary floor doesn't necessarily deter teams from not winning. A salary cap, which would also come along with a floor, which the luxury tax has been, is also going to function that way. You're going to have teams that are going to hardline now, we're not going over this amount of money because now we have to pay more in revenue. The Yankees are quoted as saying that they don't want to keep paying the Tampa Bay Rays to be better than them every year because of this revenue sharing. To me, the idea of having a floor is a good idea in theory, where teams have to be over a certain amount of money for their payroll. Right? But the issue with that then becomes you just pay a couple of veteran guys some crazy amounts of money in order to reach that minimum. Think about it this way. The Pittsburgh Pirates are going into the 2022 season. They have to have a $100 million payroll. The team that they currently have on the field makes up about, let's say, at best, $40 million. Well, now, if you bring in 3 veteran players at $20 million a pop, there you go. Now you're at the $100 million floor, even though it does not make you a more competitive team. So I think that there are things that we have to wait to see how this proposal comes out to really see whether or not the owners are acting in, quote, good faith. Now, as I kind of just wrap things up with this conversation really quick, there were some good things coming out of this press conference, this announcement. But I want to see how the proposal is actually worded and what comes out from the player's perspective of it. Now, that was one of the other things that was spoken about on MLB Network after the press conference by Dan O'Dowd, was that he feels that the perspective viewing from both the owner side and the player side, that's where the disconnect comes in. And I think that there is a lot to that. I do think that the players aren't fully seeing what the owners are trying to say, and the owners are definitely not seeing what the players are trying to see. And for me, I think that as a fan of baseball, as somebody that studies this game, that loves this game, that really just focuses in on baseball, there's going to be things that obviously both sides have to compromise in order to get a deal done. And for the players, there's certain things that have to be done to kind of reel in these cheap owners. And I say cheap in the sense of not because they are paying millions of dollars, but cheap in the sense of not trying to spend the money necessary to put the best team on the field. And for some people, for some teams, that may not be the same amount as for other teams. But I also think that by shortchanging what you're paying players in order to keep more on your bottom line is a disservice to fans. Now, again, I said it earlier, the Yankees and myself as a Yankee fan have been spoiled over the years by having George Steinbrenner that was always going after. And were the deals that George was, making always great? No, absolutely not. There was a lot of deals that, were questionable at the time and even more questionable looking back. But when you have an owner, Mike Ilitch in Detroit, that would go out and spend big money because they wanted to win. That, to me, was the most important part. When you have these owners now that seemingly their bottom line is the most important, that's where the players are going to have a gripe, myself included as a fan. I want to see my team going out and going after the biggest, the best free agents, because I want to see my team hoisting that World Series championship trophy at the end of the year. And no, Rob, it's not a piece of tin, and your weak apology is not going to change people's perspective of you, because that's how we see you. Somebody that's so insensitive and somebody that is so out of touch with what the game is, and especially for the players themselves. Fans, we live vicariously through our teams, through our favorite players. And we see the work that goes into it. We see the passion, the love that they play this game with. And yet, it seems as if the owners and their representative in Rob Manfred don't necessarily share that same love and passion. Now, sure, there are some owners that you see going after it. And to them, I say big props. There are some owners that look at the luxury tax threshold in the rearview mirror, pass it on by because they want to put out the best team that they possibly can. This, to me, is where it's absolutely important that this proposal, this new CBA, comes in where it benefits us first, the fans. The players second, and the owners last. Because this last round of CBA negotiations prior to this really favored the owners. There was a lot in those proposals that really didn't have players receiving the same kind of benefits for the level of work that they go into and put into every single day and every single game. And as a fan, the product on the field is the players, and therefore the owners need to understand that without players, you have no product. Without any product, you have no fans. Without any fans, you have no revenue. So the biggest thing for me coming out of this Rob Manfred press conference is this good faith proposal better be that. Because if we start to lose games in 2022, the game will not come back. There will be no saving grace. I've said it before and I'll say it again here now. There's no Cal Ripken Jr. chasing Lou Gehrig's games played streak. The steroid era is not going to come back in the same way that it brought baseball back in the late 90s. You allow home runs to dictate the game as it is. They're just not as entertaining as they once were now. So there's nothing to truly save baseball if we lose games in 2022. And the pettiness that we've seen coming out of this CBA negotiation is only going to stand to hurt the game even more. So, I'm going to get off my soapbox now. I want to hear from you guys down in the comment section below. Let me know, what are your feelings about this proposal that was going to be given to the players? I want to hear your thoughts on Rob Manfred as commissioner. Let me know what you would do, any kind of proposal you would have if you were the commissioner of baseball. Like I said, I'm going to be working through a video as we speak of what I would do if I were the commissioner of baseball. So let me know your thoughts on what you should do, what you would do down in the comment section below, and we'll discuss it further. As always, keep it locked in here to the Baseball Banter Broadcast. Check out our sister channels, WeSibs and the Granite Geek Show. Links to their channels are down in the show notes below. Check out the new merchandise shop, the baseballbanterbroadcast.com. Use the promo code BANTER to save 5% off of your order. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in. This is going to be a very interesting day. I think this is going to go out on February 12th, Saturday, February 12th, going into the proposal offering by the owners to the players. So it'll be an interesting day to see what comes out about the conversation between the players and the owners. So keep it locked in here to the Baseball Banter Broadcast as I continue to bring you the latest news, notes, and my personal thoughts, theories, and opinions on the game of Major League Baseball. Peace.